Everyone loves getting some quick wins in chess, and having the initiative and attacking your opponent is a wonderful feeling. And that's why I decided to make this video today on the top 5 gambit lines to win fast in chess. So I'm going over 3 openings for white and 2 for black, and you can watch this video and start playing them right away. But before we begin, if you are not subscribed to the channel yet, click the button down below and subscribe to the channel for more. Welcome, I'm Victor and this is What the Fork Chess, and I post videos pretty much every day with chess tips for improvement. Alright, so let's jump right into it. And the first opening I'm going to cover today is an e4 opening for white. And e4 openings are usually the most aggressive ones because we have open lines to attack and you develop your pieces very quickly. So if your opponent responds by playing e5, you can play d4 right away, attacking that pawn in the center. And more often than not, your opponent is going to take that pawn. And you're not going to take back with the queen in this position, even though this is a playable opening. What you're going to do is you're going to push c3, offering a pawn for your opponent. And they're going to take that pawn. More often than not, they're going to do that. And here, you are not going to take this pawn back with the knight here. No, you're going to offer yet another pawn by developing your bishop to c4. And now you are already attacking this point. Oops, this point right here. That is a weak squared f7. And your opponent's going to take that pawn. And now you take back with the bishop. And this is the Danish Gambit. You are already threatening to take this pawn and take this rook. If this bishop is developed in a bad way, these two pieces are going to hang. And this queen is threatening to join the party and attack here on f7 very quickly. You can also develop your knight and castle very fast. You gave up 2 pawns, that's true, but you have so many open lines. You have a lead in development. You have 2 bishops pointing at the king side. And if your opponent plays something that is not very accurate, they can lose the game on the spot. All right, and the Danish Gambit is just the first one. This is my second favorite gambit to play when I play e4. And that's my favorite opening, by the way. I like opening with e4. And if your opponent doesn't play e5, they play c5, they go for the Sicilian defense, you can go right away with the Smith-Morra Gambit. There's another way to reach this gambit I'm going to show you later, but this is the most straightforward one. You play d4 and you're already attacking that c pawn, and they are going to take your pawn. And no, you are not to take back with the queen. You're not going to do that. You're going to push c3, just like the Danish Gambit here. And your opponent, more often than not, is going to take this pawn. You take back with the knight, and you have a massive lead in development. And you have 2 very powerful open lines here. You have the C open file and the D half open file to attack. And from here on, the most common moves for black are, in this case, knight to c6. You're going to develop your knight, and you're going to develop your bishop as well to c4. And you are ready to castle right away. If they attack your bishop, you just drop it back. In some cases, you can also drop it back here. It's also possible to do that. But bishop to b3 is the most common one. And what you're going to do here is you're going to take your queen out of the way so you can bring your rook to the half open file and develop this bishop to either here or here, depending if there's a knight here or something. And then bring the other rook to the open file so you can have 2 rooks here on the open files. And it's very easy to attack in this opening. You play queen e2, you bring your rook to the open file, you develop this bishop, bring the rook to the open file, and you have a very, very strong attacking position. You can reach this opening through other transpositions. If your opponent plays this and you develop your knight here, which is a very common move, your opponent's going to think that you're going for an open Sicilian, so they might play something like this, or maybe develop their knight over here. And what you're going to do is push d4, and as they take, you are not going to take back with your knight. That's what they're expecting. What you're actually going to do is play c3, forcing your opponent to take or encouraging them to take, and then you transpose to the same exact position through a different move order, but you're reaching the same position. Now you can develop your bishop, castle, you can bring your queen over here, and then bring your rook to the half open file, develop your bishop, bring the other rook. Very simple game. Sometimes you can also push this pawn, because remember, this pawn is probably going to be pinned here due to your rook exerting pressure on the d file. So keep your eyes open for this pawn push as well. This is a very aggressive opening against the Sicilian defense and one of my favorite options. And the third opening, the third gambit that I'm going to talk about here is the Blackmar-Diemer Gambit, which is actually a 2-in-1, right? So when you play e4 and your opponent goes for The Scandinavian defense, of course, this can be reached through other positions as well. You can play, for example, d4, and if your opponent plays d5, you can push this pawn right here and you have the same exact position. But in this case, we are reaching this through a Scandinavian defense, let's say. And I like to play this against the Scandi because Scandi players are not usually ready for this. And they take the pawn right here, you develop your knight, attacking that pawn, forcing your opponent to defend. And now you are not going to do to take the pawn or anything. You're just going to play f3, offering this pawn to your opponent. So if they take this pawn, you can take back with your knight, of course. You can take that with your knight. But, of course, there is another option. You can also take with the queen, offering another pawn so your opponent can take this pawn with the queen, and then immediately you develop your bishop with tempo on the queen, and you're ready to castle long right after that. It's another gambit line. You can take a look at that. I have a video on this opening as well. It is playable. It is really interesting if you're playing against lower rated opponents and you want to get some quick wins in faster time controls such as splits or bullet. That's great, but I go for the safe approach here, taking with the knight, and now your opponent cannot take the pawn because it's defended, but they can keep developing their pieces. And what you're going to do here is very simple. You're going to develop your bishop, and then you can castle very quickly, and you have your rook on the open file. Your opponent's going to castle kingside. You can just develop these two pieces, bring the other rook to the other open file or half open file, and it's going to be a very easy game for you. Have easy development, open lines just for the cost of one pawn. Now switching to black's perspective, this is one of my favorite openings to play against e4. I love playing the Scandinavian defense, and the opening, the variation that I like to go for is not taking with the queen here, but instead developing the knight to f6, attacking that pawn, forcing my opponent to defend it. More often than not, they're going to defend with the knight here, and I have an entire video covering that. But sometimes they're going to defend with c4, and that gives me the chance to play this very interesting move e6, offering a pawn for my opponent to take, and I take back with my bishop. So I have a massive lead in development. I have open lines to attack, and of course, for the cost of one pawn, I have a massive initiative here. My opponent more often than not is going to play d4. This is known as the Icelandic Gambit. Icelandic Gambit, very interesting. And my very powerful move here is actually play bishop to b4 check, forcing my opponent to block this check, more often than not with the knight. And this is the punch, the very powerful move, knight to e4. And now I'm threatening to do a lot of things here. I'm threatening this knight that is being attacked a lot of times. This pawn is also kind of hanging. So it doesn't really matter what my opponent does here. They're probably going to lose something. If I take this knight, they take back. I can take here, and I forked a lot of pieces here. So they have to do something about this attack. Let's imagine they play bishop here. Well, by doing that, they covered the queen that is the only defender of this pawn, so I can go ahead and take this pawn with my queen. This is one thing that we could do, right? So there are many other variations that they can go for here, but everything is kind of losing something. So you keep your eyes opening for this Icelandic Gambit. It's a very interesting opening. I have a full video on this. You can check it out as well. Well, but what if my opponent doesn't play e5? What if they play d4? Well, in this case, you have this very powerful Gambit playing e5, and no, we're not going to play the England Gambit in this variation. We are going to actually push d6 and play the Charlie Gambit. Actually, the full name is Hartlaub Charlie Gambit. And forcing our opponent to take here, encouraging them to take, and then we take back with the bishop. We have open lines, lead in development, and this is a great opening for us to play. We can start by developing the queen side first, so we're going to focus on the queen side pieces first. So we push knight to c6, and after knight to c3, we play bishop to g4, attacking that knight. They play e3. We play queen to e7, preparing to castle long. That's exactly what we're going to do. And by castling long, we are actually setting up for a discovered attack here. So at a moment's notice, this bishop can go ahead and, sacrifice here or take a pawn with check, and we can win the queen. And this happens in many variations. So if your opponent goes ahead and castles here, they are already losing. You can take that knight and trade the knight, take the pawn, sacrificing our bishop here. And if they take the bishop, we can win the queen. This is a very interesting opening line. If they take here, of course, we just follow up with our development, but we are winning by a lot. We can just trade down material and win this game. The king is very misplaced here. We have a better pawn structure. Our king is safe. We have a lead in material as well. So lead in development too. So this is a very nice opening to play as black. It's not the England Gambit, and we're not just counting on one simple trap that we are going to play. No, this is an actual opening that is pretty much playable for black, and I highly recommend it. I played this myself, and I got some quick wins with this. So tell me what you think, guys, in the comments down below. I would love to see your opinions, and if you have a refutation for one of these gambits, please put them in the comments as well. I would love to see them and answer them as well. Leave your like if you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more, and as always, I see you guys in the next one.